Welcome to the League of Statistics. I'm Sirza, and today we'll be doing a preseason analysis on the new lethality stat. Lethality is Riot's new term for armor penetration, which was largely a misnomer in its function. Lethality is functionally different from armor penetration as, while it is a flat value, it has a scaling component to it based on your opponent's level. The easiest way to conceptualize this is all lethality / armor penetration now works like the precision mastery in the cunning tree. Now, before I go into the math of lethality and all the changes it brings, I'm sure there are some of you out there that want a quick and simple answer. So is lethality and the changes made to lethality items a nerf or a buff? In general, it's a nerf. For AD carries, it's a significant nerf, while for assassins and bruisers, it's a moderate buff. For armor penetration rune users, i.e. bruisers, it's a small buff. With that out of the way, we first need to look at why armor penetration needed to be changed to lethality and if the change is healthy. This graph shows the relationship between armor and armor penetration. The x-axis is the amount of armor, the y-axis shows the percent damage reduction, with 1 being no damage reduction and 0 being full damage reduction. The red line is damage reduction as armor increases, while the blue line shows the damage curve of armor penetration at 50 armor penetration intervals up to 400 armor penetration. As the graph clearly shows, armor and armor penetration have an inverse relationship. As the value of armor increases, the value of a single point of armor penetration decreases. This is why armor penetration has been largely a misnomer. It does not do much to make tanks more vulnerable, and is in fact most effective against opponents who have as little armor as possible. So changing the name to lethality helps clarify the stat's role in League of Legends. So now what about lethality and its scaling? Well, as Riot has said, lethality is calculated as 0.4 lethality plus 0.6 lethality times opponent level divided by 18. So with the value of lethality and armor penetration being equal, this is a straight nerf, no two ways about it. However, the values are not the same. This graph shows the percent amount of damage one would do to 100 armor opponent as their level increases, with the max amount of armor penetration blue and lethality purple one can get from items alone. As you can see, the current iteration of armor penetration is better until the opponent is level 12, at which they are equal, and beyond that lethality is better. This change reduces how snowballing armor penetration currently is by reducing its early level power by changing it to lethality. However, lethality offers more late game viability for armor penetration builds, which was their Achilles heel. So while it's a nerf item-wise until level 12, I would say it creates a healthier gameplay for armor penetration users and increases their viability beyond the early and mid game. Now we'll look at the items, masteries, and runes affected by these changes. As I mentioned earlier, the easiest way to conceptualize the change of armor penetration to lethality was the precision mastery in the cunning tree. The mastery has changed from 3 flat armor penetration and 0.3 armor penetration per level for a total of 8.4 armor penetration to 8.5 lethality. Now, 8.5 lethality calculates out to 3.4 armor penetration and 0.283 repeating armor penetration per opponent level. Essentially, this mastery has not changed one bit, since functionality precision is lethality. While masteries were left relatively unchanged, items were heavily overhauled. The changes to Youmu's will cause most people to have a gut reaction that it's a huge nerf to the item. This is accurate to an extent, and will be the big theme to the lethality changes. The removal of 40% attack speed is a huge nerf to AD carries. Having the same amount of lethality as it had armor penetration is a huge nerf to AD carries. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's look at what this item does well. It's 300 gold cheaper, making it more affordable to non-AD carries, like bruisers. The 20 out of combat movement speed is a nice addition that helps less mobile champions roam, like bruisers. It's almost like they redesigned this item to fit bruisers. It's literally a one-stop shop for every stat a bruiser like Darius wants and needs. It's been made abysmal for AD carries, whose use made balancing it hard, and still serves its purpose for assassins like Rengar. So yes, it's a nerf to AD carries, but a buff to bruisers, and has been made a specialized item for them. Duskbladed Drakthar shares that similar theme to Youmu's. It loses 10 AD but has a higher lethality value than previous versions, giving it more armor penetration beyond level 8. The change of 5% movement speed to 20 out of combat movement speed is also a slight nerf. It's the proc change that's huge for this item. Night Stalker is a large buff since it has no cooldown and does true damage that scales with lethality, whereas Nightfall in the old Duskblade had a 120-second cooldown. Going back to the theme though, this change is a nerf to AD carries. The only way to get Night Stalker is to be unseen for at least 1 second and only last for 4 seconds after being seen. The only AD carries that could effectively use this item are Twitch and Vayne due to their stealth abilities. On the other hand, these changes are huge buffs for assassins whose core playstyle fits this item perfectly. Much like Youmu's, this item is designed for assassins right down to having blackout to aid assassins in sneaking past wards. So yes, again, it's a nerf to AD carries, but a buff to assassin and has been made a specialized item for them. Edge of Night is the new lethality item, and it fills the spot that Maul of Malmortius occupied before its changes. As such, I'm going to compare it to Maw based on the similarity in design. Now this item, much like Duskblade, is defined in its comparison by its active ability. Stat-wise, it is better than the old Maw by a little bit. However, Maw's Lifeline and Life Grip make it a better item when compared to Edge of Night's Spell Shield. This is the one item I feel is just a general nerf when compared to the old Maw, and its active really only lends itself to the assassin style of play. We won't really know where this item will fall until it sees actual competitive use. Finally, we look at the core item for the previous three, Serrated Dirk. Overall, I'd say 5 more AD and 20 out of combat movement speed is a fair, if not better, trade for 5 or less armor penetration and the loss of the on-hit damage after killing a minion, so it's a buff, sort of. The last thing to look at are runes. Lethality marks are 1.6 versus 1.3 for armor penetration marks, and lethality quints are 3.2 versus 2.6 for armor penetration quints. As such, lethality marks and quints will eventually give more armor penetration than the old marks and quints. What's important is at what point they become better. When an opponent is at level 13 or higher is when lethality marks and quints become better, which is mid to late game. Much like earlier, this is both a buff and a nerf. Overall, armor penetration marks and quints aren't used on too many champions currently, and the change to lethality, especially with such a late breakpoint, probably will limit its use even more. However, those who do benefit greatly from armor penetration runes, like Urgot, will gain even more benefit from the change to lethality, so for them it's a buff. So to summarize, lethality is a mixed bag. In general, it's a nerf because the generalized use of armor penetration has been heavily limited by the change to lethality. As such, AD carries no longer have a high armor penetration build path that will yield effective results compared to alternatives. On the other hand, while the stat is more specialized in certain champions and playstyles, those champions and playstyles have received a sizable buff by the change to lethality. That's all on lethality. If you enjoyed this video, look forward to more videos going in depth on the rest of the preseason changes in the future, because we'll keep doing the math so you don't have to. Thank you for watching.